Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here today with another episode of Ask Dr. Adriana, our version of a Dear Abby type column that's been super fun to create because I love talking about so many different interesting topics, and I love taking questions from the audience, from the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities group. And let me just say a little bit about what that is before I introduce our exciting guest. I'm so happy to have him here today. Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health is a podcast that I started about just over a year ago, a year and a half ago, where I really wanted to explore other perspectives on mental health besides the sort of conventional Western medicine. If you have a problem, you go talk about it with somebody and you go take a pill for it. There are so many traditional healing methods. There are so many more holistic healing methods that are available. And that's really what the theme of the group has been. And I interview a lot of different people on the podcast. And today on Ask Dr. A, as I like to call it for short, I also have one of my favorite podcast guests. He's been on twice, TJ Woodward. Welcome, TJ.
Thank you so much, Adriana. I'm so happy to be here. And as you know, I love talking about anything that helps us live a more dynamic and connected life. So I appreciate you. I've loved being on your podcast, and I'm excited about the show today.
Yes, TJ is really, let's talk a little bit about who TJ is. He is an inspirational speaker. He's a best-selling author. He is really what I see as a thought leader of transformative change. You know, clearly on the planet, we're in a time where everything's going wild, everything's turning upside down. It's a time of change. And TJ is really leading the way, both with his work around addiction and recovery, which is how we met, was working in a rehab together, but also just for a broader audience, bringing forth principles, empowering principles that can help people to change whatever's not working in their lives and move them towards more consciousness, more happiness, inner peace, and fulfillment. How's that for an impromptu intro?
Well, I love it. And I feel the same way about you. And, you know, we've collaborated so many times over the years, and I agree completely. We're living in remarkable times. You know, we keep hearing this, you know, we're living in unprecedented times. We're living in remarkable times. And it's true. And it's really easy, I think, to go to sleep right now. But you and I are here to talk about how we can become aware of that and why even stay awake? Why even stay conscious? What's the point? What's the reason? And I think that is really my favorite conversation. It's a moment-to-moment choice of how we want to live.
Exactly. And so kind of our theme, right, for this episode is creating a conscious life. So let's just start with, what does that mean to you to create a conscious life?
Well, I'm going to start with a Carl Jung quote, and I actually opened my new book with this quote, and it's very, very simple, and I think it speaks to it so clearly. And this is what he said: until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life, and we will call it fate.
Ooh.
So, right, I'll say it one more time. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life, and we will call it fate.
Wow.
And really what that means to me is, as long as I'm not aware of the unconscious programming, as long as I'm not aware of the core false beliefs, that the wounds that haven't been healed, everything that's buried in the unconscious or subconscious, we do have a conversation that's emerging in our culture right now about unconscious biases and beliefs. I think where we're taking it is like, yeah, we need to become aware of them. But when we bring them up into conscious awareness, that's when we can start to choose. Otherwise, the program's running the show. And most of us, and I'll put myself in this camp, for the first 30 years of my life, I wasn't completely aware that the unconscious programming was actually creating reality. I just thought life kind of sucked and it was difficult and I don't know how to manage it. And why does this keep happening to me? So those kind of questions and those kind of points of view simply let us know that we're being run by the unconscious programming. Nothing wrong with it, but what kind of life do we want to create? And what gets created when we're unaware of that? Basically, it's running the show, and most of us don't even know it.
So let's clarify some terms here. When you say unconscious programming, what do you mean?
Well, we come into this world. This is my experience. This is my point of view. And honestly, it's the basis of all of my work. And that is, we come into this world as whole and perfect spiritual beings. In other words, a blank canvas. We come in innocent. There's all these different words to describe it. Maybe we could say we come in pure, connected with our true essence. And then we come into a world that teaches us about good and bad and right and wrong. And you act this way because of your race. You act this way because of your gender. We act this way because of our family. And we start to get programmed. Maybe it's a religious program. Maybe it's going to school. You know, one of my friends says, life was really amazing. And then I went to kindergarten. Right. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
right. What? Yeah. And I mean, I remember having a teacher. She just didn't like me, or at least that's how I felt. Right. And so we get programmed to believe that we are broken and the world is broken. And once we start believing that, most of us, in order to manage it or survive it, we bury it. We bury it in the unconscious or the subconscious. And it's like we're a projector and we're projecting everything that we've ever believed about ourselves in the world onto the world, and we start to see it everywhere.
Right. So now let's get a little more specific with that. Okay. One of the terms that you use throughout your books and that we talk about, because we've actually collaborated on some workbooks for the 3 books that you've written, is this term core false beliefs. Now, what does that mean? Because we hear in standard psychology, we might hear the term limiting beliefs or a core belief or even a core limiting belief. You know, but you actually, which means, you know, exactly like these programs that we learn, the like fundamental ways we see ourselves in the world, but you've actually coined the term core false beliefs. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, in a world of hashtags, I was shocked to realize that no one had ever used hashtag core false beliefs. So of course I jumped on it, and now I post all the time about it, because in traditional psychology, I think there are 2 fundamental issues. And I want to also start by saying traditional psychology has really helped me. It helped me through my 20s when I did not know how to cope or manage. And I'm using those terms very consciously right now. I was just trying to cope and get through. And it did help me. But the issue, I think, with traditional psychology is twofold. One, they call them core beliefs. I really love adding the word false, because we want to acknowledge that the core false beliefs that we're carrying around about ourselves aren't the ultimate truth. It's a story, it's a narrative, it's a frequency. My other issue with traditional psychology, which we're going to get into, I know more, is how we actually start to manage them and heal them. I have a very different idea. You and I have a very different point of view and a framework about how we actually start to heal those.
Yeah. So, okay. So, but you know, some people might listen to this and think, TJ, but I mean, how do you know it's a false belief? How do you know that I really am, there's not something wrong with me? I mean, many people that you and I work with have been given the diagnosis or label that I'm a bipolar, I have bipolar disorder, I'm bipolar, I'm an addict, I have addiction, right? How can you tell me that there's not something wrong with me? I'm genetically flawed, I'm defective, I have character defects, right?
Yeah. So of course, you know, this is one of my favorite conversations, because so often, you know, there are entire religious systems that teach people you're fundamentally broken and flawed, and you need to find God to heal that, right? Or to basically to have God heal that, right? And I mean, there has been some pushback recently on some of my posts, which I love. I really do. I love it, because we can be in a conversation, and it came from a religious perspective. I didn't have that kind of religion, so I didn't have that to work with. But when we're talking about mental health and addiction, a lot of clinicians, some of them very well intentioned, are looking at their client, their patient, as their diagnosis, as their behavior, right? And you know, you and I know the power of I am. So if I say I am an addict, oh God, what's that frequency? What does it create when I believe I have a lifelong illness that can never be healed, only treated one day at a time, versus this is what I have, not who I am? Right. And when we make that very small, but also, you know, a very huge distinction, we start to open up to different possibilities rather than staying stuck. And so, you know, a simple way to say it is, if I look at a very small child, the pre-programmed human, can I look at them and say, wow, there's something fundamentally wrong with this human? It would be very difficult, I think, for most of us to say that, I hope at least. And so if we can't ourselves remember a time that we felt whole and perfect or unharmed and unharmable, we can look at the pristine nature of a small child and say, wow, that was me too once. And so then mental health, recovery, spiritual path is really about getting back to that and looking at all the layers we've put upon it. And that's really where the core false beliefs come in. You know, mom yelled and screamed. My little brain wasn't developed enough to understand mom had a mental health issue. By the way, this is a true story for me. I wasn't able to identify at a very small age that my mom might be have some undiagnosed mental health issues. So I took it on. Oh, I must be bad. I must be wrong. Why is mom yelling? I'm a bad kid. I'm a bad human. And it wasn't cognitive as much as it was energetic. Like, oh, I remember just like a lot of freezing, a lot of like tightening up. And then I buried these core false beliefs. And then once I had at a very deep level decided I was unlovable and I was unworthy, that set up about the trajectory of my entire life, recreated and replicating situations to confirm that, not consciously, but unconsciously.
Hey TJ, Adriana Power just got out. Like,
Okay.
um, she said that she'll be back soon.
Okay, perfect. So I can certainly keep talking about this. I'll
Yes.
share an example from my own story, because I think sharing our journeys can be even more powerful than sharing some of these concepts. So when I was a very young child, I made a core decision, and again, it's not super conscious because our brains aren't even necessarily developed enough. But at a very young age, I decided I was unlovable, right? I'm unlovable. And that became a frequency or a core false belief about that I believed about myself. And so I found myself walking in the world with this core false belief. And as I grew up, I remember feeling this in almost every situation in my life. So then I kept having situations that would confirm that core false belief. So by the time I was a teenager and then a young adult, trying to heal this or to fix this sense of unlovability, I was trying to fix it or to heal it. And I'm using the term fix consciously because at that time I believed I was broken and something needed to be fixed. And so I thought I was going to do that through relationship. So my style with that, which we could call an attachment style, was please love me, please love me, please love me. So I was looking for love in all the wrong places, as they say. And I could literally walk into a room of people and my vibration of unlovability would match up with someone in the room that would confirm that. And again, none of this was conscious. On a conscious level, I thought the way I would heal this sense of brokenness and of disconnection was to find a loving relationship, to find fulfilling work, to find friends that could help me feel better. But unconsciously, the frequency was, it was really creating this chooser. And I was like, oh, there's the person. And it's not like I was choosing a bad person. I was just choosing someone that had a similar frequency.
Sorry, I'm back. The power went out, so my Wi-Fi went out. I love technology. Actually, they're doing construction on the building, and I have a feeling they turned the power off without letting us know. So I apologize, but I'm hotspotted to my phone now. So aren't I clever? So I'm guessing you've been talking more about core false beliefs, or where are we at?
Yeah, so I was giving an example out of my own life, really, about having this core belief of being unlovable and my journey with that, and looking outside of myself to try to fix it because I did feel broken or try to heal it. And that I kept, as much as I wanted something outside of me to heal it, I kept my chooser, my picker, if you will, was choosing someone or some situation to confirm the core false belief.
Yeah. So this is how we basically end up creating problems for ourselves. We create something called toxic shame, which we can mention briefly, I think. Like when you feel that bad about yourself and you believe yourself to be fundamentally broken, defective, it creates this sense of shame, like there's something wrong with me, but you call it toxic shame. So just say something about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When I wrote Conscious Recovery, I used the term toxic shame. And just, to give credit where credit is due, John Bradshaw in the 80s used the term toxic shame. And I resonated so much with it then, because shame is literally toxic in our system. Now, back in the day, he actually said there's healthy shame and toxic shame. And to me now, I would say it's really more guilt and shame, right? If I feel guilty about my behavior, that's actually an internal guidance system saying, yeah, I need to clean this up, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. But shame is something fundamentally different. It is a belief that I'm broken, that I'm damaged, there's something fundamentally flawed about me, and that becomes toxic in our system. We know, whether we're looking at holistic medicine or even Western medicine now, is recognizing that creates literal disease in the body, not from a place of blaming ourselves, but from a place of being curious about what does it create when I literally hold that frequency of toxicity, of shame. And we see it leading to all kinds of mental health issues, certainly addiction, and all sorts of other health issues.
Well, not only that, but like abusive relationships, right? Unhealthy, toxic relationships, where maybe you're not treated the way, you have an idea you probably, you would like to be treated, being taken advantage of, maybe being with like a narcissist, gaslighting, all these things that I work with so much, again, in addiction and recovery in particular. But I think this explains in part why people, especially if they have those earlier life experiences of abuse and neglect, they come to believe these core false beliefs about themselves. It creates the toxic shame, and then they're going to basically vibrate at that frequency and attract more of the same, more of the people, places, and things, right, to mirror back to them that, see, I really am broken and defective. Look at my life.
Yes, and I want to like take a deep breath here, because what I'm going to say is counter to what is really popular in our culture right now. What's really popular in our culture right now is a huge conversation about how to remove toxic relationships from our life. And that is, of course, an important conversation, but it doesn't stop there. It's much deeper. When I'm accountable that I'm choosing those, there's something that I can do about that. Now, I have given talks and someone has come up to me and said, you are victim blaming. So I want to be really clear. Opposite. In my estimation, what I'm actually saying is, no, we can empower ourselves rather than being in the victim, right? So yes, let's say that I'm a person who has a core belief that I'm not good enough, right? And so I'm vibrating with this. I feel really damaged and broken. And of course, so I choose a narcissist, right? And then this person is not treating me well. And all my friends are like, you need to leave this person. He's such a jerk. And yes, and I've chosen this for a reason. So yeah, I can remove that toxic relationship. No one's saying staying in an abusive relationship is what you need to do. But what we want to do is empower ourselves, not blame ourselves, but empower ourselves to say, oh, yes, I attracted that, but I also was attracted to that relationship. Not because I'm damaged or broken, but because I was trying to heal something. See, then we can start empowering ourselves and saying, wow, if I believe that's what I deserved, what can be healed within me? That's ultimate empowerment. When I heal the core false belief, I start to choose different relationships. We don't have to spend so much time trying to navigate the externals. When we heal the internals, then we start to have, it's almost like magic starts to happen and our relationships start to shift. We leave some relationships, we might leave a work environment, but that saying that work environment is toxic or that person is toxic is only a very small part of the story.
Well, right. And I think this is a fundamental difference then in creating a conscious life, which we could also say is choosing to, yes, right, to create a conscious life versus unconsciously choosing. You're always choosing, right? Yeah. You're either conscious of your choices or you're not conscious of your choices, but you're still choosing, like you say, right? And so what we're trying to do with people is show them that you don't have to remain stuck in a victim type mentality where things happen to you. You actually, it's not like you're in the backseat of the car and someone else is driving the car. You actually can get in the driver's seat of your own life, and drive your life in a direction you would like to go. Hence the term conscious creation. So let's go there. So what is this wonderful new book in the trilogy? And let's talk about this trilogy. What is this latest episode in the trilogy of conscious creation?
So the third book is Conscious Creation, 5 Steps to Embracing the Life of Your Dreams. And we've really set the stage beautifully. I wrote the book. I've been working with this model honestly, for about 2 years. I've done workshops. I've used this in a lot of the work that I do. But it revealed to me that it wants to be a book, right? And that it wants to be a workbook, which I'm collaborating with you, Dr. A. I'll call you that now, Dr. A. I like it. To collaborate, to really give people tools, because most people look at setting intentions or setting goals for their life, maybe without diving into the unconscious or the subconscious first. That's why I've given it this acronym, because as we've been discussing, I can set goals all day long, and it's also in our culture, it's like crush it, dominate, make this happen. I was watching someone, I won't name him, but he's a public figure, and he said, if you live in California and you're waking up any later than 4 a.m., you're missing the mark. You need to be up. Someone on the East Coast is already making decisions for your life. So like there's this like and then people are like, okay, I'm working 12 hours, I'm working 14 hours. Why can't I manifest the life of my dreams? Why do I keep choosing these relationships? Why am I unfulfilled in my work? So I know that was a lot to unpack, but that's really why I wrote the book. I want to give people a different approach to creating their life.
Yes. And you made reference to your like a movie projector, which is kind of the symbolism that runs throughout the book. So can you say more about that?
Yeah, so I've given these 5 steps. And first of all, I just want to name, I promised myself at one point, I will never. Now, what happens when we say I will never? So I try to never say never now, but I will never be that person that creates the 4-step, 8-step. I just didn't want to be that person. And yet here I am, 5 steps to embracing the life of your dreams. I've given it the acronym MOVIE, MOVIE, for 2 reasons. One, it's easier to remember, hopefully, but it really is about holding a projector. We hold the projector. We are the director of our movie. We choose the actors in our movie, and we're really projecting onto a blank screen. And again, giving credit where credit is due, I use a quote from the incredible Byron Katie in the book. And she says, if we have a piece of lint on the lens, we will see that piece of lint everywhere, and we will think it is an attribute of someone else, but it's really our lint. And so once we clear the lens, which are the first 2 steps of the 5-step process, once we clear that, we don't have that lint where we keep seeing the same situations over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. So what are the 5 steps?
Making peace with the past, overcoming core false beliefs, visioning, intention setting, and embodying your vision.
So just tell us a little bit more about each of those.
Yeah, so M and O really go together, making peace with the past, overcoming core false beliefs. This is what we've been talking about. Many people, set New Year's resolutions, or maybe they do the vision board. Probably a lot of viewers right now have done the vision board. I know I've done plenty. And we try to manifest, the law of attraction says we hold thoughts in mind and then we create it, we attract it. The issue that I have with that is most of us, or many of us, haven't cleared away the past or worked on overcoming these core false beliefs. So, I can say I want to make X number of dollars, and I want this certain job, and I want a partner that looks like this, and a house and a car and all that. But if I'm creating my intentions from my mind, or from even from my emotion, if I haven't healed the past, I'm bringing that forward into the present and into the future. Conscious creation says, let's clear away a lot of the past. There's no finish line there, but we continue to make peace with what's happened. We overcome these core false beliefs so that we have, and to use a metaphor within a metaphor, we have a blank canvas to paint on, or we've cleared the lens of that projector.
how do people do that? I mean, obviously, I have, as a psychologist and coach, I have my own techniques. I love energy psychology. I love access consciousness. There are many, many ways that people can do this work. What do you suggest for people? How would they go about overcoming those false beliefs?
So here's what I'll say, and I don't mean to sound salesy, but like the book and the workbook will really help someone with some tools. I just did a video course, and the reason I'm saying that is I can't really answer that in 5 minutes, but I'm going to answer this in a very simple way. There are 3 steps: awareness, awareness, and awareness, right? Because we're bringing, as Carl Jung says, we're bringing the unconscious into conscious. So we notice our thoughts, we notice our narrative, we notice our frequency. Krishnamurti, this is I think my all-time favorite quote, one of a few, because I say it all the time. He says, the highest form of human intelligence is to see ourselves without judgment. Mm-hmm. Right? So blame and judgment are low frequencies, not bad frequencies. We want to look at every frequency is perfect, but what does it create? Right. So the frequency of I'm damaged, what does it create in my life? I'm aware of that. So awareness, awareness, awareness. I'm aware of what it creates. I'm aware of the narrative. I'm aware of the origin of that. And then I start to play with that. Again, it's much more, there are many more layers to this, but on the surface, it is that awareness, because most of us think life is happening to us. Conscious creation, when my editor read it, I'm just going to tell you, she said it feels a little bit advanced. You're assuming that people have done some work before they came to conscious creation. And that is true, right? Because conscious creation is for someone that wants to go deeper. Maybe they've done the law of attraction. Maybe they've been in therapy for 20 years. And there's got to be something more to this. I keep finding myself in these situations and I want to break free.
Yeah, exactly. So really how I see that is, okay, making peace with the past, overcoming those core false beliefs is about the past, the unconscious, bringing that to light, doing some healing work around it. And then it moves in a different direction into visioning. So what is that?
Yeah, very simple. Starting with what's the difference between visualization and visioning. So visualization is the law of attraction. It's what do I want to create? And how do I hold those thoughts that, like in the movie The Secret, the little kid wants a bike. So he just imagines a bike every day, and then one day it shows up, right? We're going to go deeper than that in conscious creation, because once we've done the healing and the overcoming, or we're in that process, we create a space where we listen. So visualization is thinking and creating from our mind, at least on one level, and visioning is much deeper. And, I want to acknowledge my friend Michael Beckwith. His book, Life Visioning, is life changing. And I give him all kinds of credit in the book because I'm really using his model. And that is, how do I create a space where I'm listening to that inner knowing? We all have it. We're all intuitive, highly intuitive beings. Most of us have been trained out of that, right? Even animals are very intuitive. They feel vibrations on the planet. They know when a tsunami is coming. They run to higher ground instinctively. So at our core, we're all highly intuitive beings. Conscious creation is inviting us to spend some time in the silence and listen. And we create our intentions from that deeper place. And it's a completely different way of living.
I really hear that as receiving, right? Like that's rather than me sort of forcing thinking, pushing something into existence with my ego and my mind, which is a very yang energy, if we want to talk yin and yang, right? The yin energy is I'm quiet, I'm creating a space, and I'm receptive to, maybe it's my own inner voice, or maybe it's messages from the universe. Maybe the universe is trying to show me something. Maybe consciousness itself is trying to direct me somewhere, but I'm not paying attention because I'm so busy in my head thinking what I should be doing and how I should look and what are people going to think. And we're all caught up in the judgments of ourselves and others that we're drowning out the quiet little voice. And like I work a lot even with the spirit world, and it's a similar thing. We might be getting messages from our spirit guides, and things like that. But we can't listen and hear those things and receive them if we're constantly in the yang energy of, I have to do this and get out there and make this thing happen. Like you said, the energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And in American culture specifically, there's a lot of focus on the crushing it and making it happen. And there's something useful about that, but it's extremely limited, because when we tap into intuition, we receive messages, as you say, internal and external messages that come from a much deeper place. And when I dedicate my life to visioning, I not only do I receive a more powerful message for myself, in my experience, I also receive a deeper purpose that actually helps the world as well. And I also receive messages and recognize that I have everything within me to fulfill them. In other words, I'm not burning myself out by trying to make it happen. I move into allowance and receptivity, as you said.
Love it. Okay, so that takes us to V. Now, how about I and E?
I and E, intention setting. My friend Gregory Spencer gave me a process that was absolutely life-changing. It's extremely tangible. He's very practical, and it's just a way to work with intentions that actually bring these visions to life. Because I know people, and I'll put myself in this camp, where I'm kind of in the spiritual world, where I love just sitting and receiving messages. Oh, I love it. I could be there all day, but then it's like, oh, wait, this needs to actually now come into the world. And as I said, the issue is most people start there. So intention setting is just a very practical process that you're going to embark on when you read the book and the workbook. And it's going to help you have like a weekly action plan to really bring this stuff to life. And then embodying the vision, I'm just going to say it simply, it's holding the frequency of that which you want to manifest or step into or create in your life. It's when we heal the core false beliefs, we are in the frequency of our own wholeness, our own worthiness. We're holding that energy and realizing that it's magnetic in the world. And then we start to make really different choices.
See, that's super cool. So that's taking that is really the conscious creation, right? You've received information, you've visioned it, and now you're putting it forth, actualizing it in the world. And there are ways to do that. And for some people, I do want to say, some people really are great at visioning. They're like big, the big creators, and yet they struggle with this piece of bringing it into the world. Yeah. And usually what I say to those people is, that's not a fault. It's not something that's wrong with you. Just partner up with people who are really good at bringing things to life, right?
That's right. That's it.
I now work with a team where I come up with ideas, we come up with ideas together, and they're the ones who then carry them out. They create the graphics. They figure out the technology of how we can get on this, Facebook Live together, things like that. It's like, know where your strengths are. And if you're not great at doing, I and E, then get some support, because other people are great at it.
Well, it's amazing you're saying this, because part of the I step, intention setting, is getting an accountability partner, right? So then we start to look at a specific, measurable, realistic goals, but are also a stretch. And for some of us, I'm talking to myself, asking for help is a big stretch, like realizing that I'm not the one that has to do everything, nor am I the one that should be doing everything. And there's an accountability too that's built into this process, where you have someone where you're checking in every single week and saying, these are the action items I did. These are the ones I didn't do. No blame, no shame. We roll them over, we keep moving. And then, as you're saying, Adriana, we open up to the infinite possibilities of who can assist in this vision coming into the world, right? Like I partner with Jeremy Miller. He's incredible, right? He does things that I don't know how to do, like edit video, and so everything that comes from this deeper vision, in my experience, always also comes with everything we need to fulfill it. So then it becomes about, what am I noticing? Oh, I'm noticing, like for me, Jeremy, he's incredible, and he wants to help me bring this vision to life. Wow, it's an accountability and a collaborative partner. All of that is great. And it's just very, very different than like, oh, I need to figure out who's going to help me do this, right? That energy, right?
Right. Or that many of us have, and this is where I'm guilty, I have to do it all on my own.
Oh,
I'm
for
all
sure.
I'm all alone in the world, and I have to do it all on my own. And right. And not actually, for many years, I was so walled off. I was not actually willing to ask for the support or to be willing to receive it. So that's a big one too. That's often a core false belief that some of us have to overcome, is this idea that I'm all alone and I have to do it all by myself. And that's not true either, because we're actually never alone, really.
And
That's
thank
an
you for
illusion.
that.
Yeah.
Because just briefly, I want to be really transparent about that. That was a dynamic for me. I remember when I first started my spiritual center in 2012, it was a Sunday morning. I was up on a table hanging the banner outside of the spiritual center. And my friend Summer walks up and she said, "Can I help you hang that?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'm fine. I'm fine." And she said, "Wow, it's interesting. You're not necessarily great at asking for help, are you?" It's like I'm up on the table, my arms stretched out, about to fall over. I mean, and I'm preparing to like do this talk. And when she said that, I realized, oh my gosh, my strategy is I've got this.
Yeah.
I'm fine. But the core false belief somehow was like, I'm unworthy. And so I kept trying to prove that I didn't need anyone. I'm the superhero. I can do it all alone. So I thank you for saying that, because I think it's really important for some of us to hear.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit. We actually have some questions that people have sent in, and we're gonna take them one by one and kind of see what we come up with here. So this one is, "Hi, Dr. Adriana. I've been trying to create a more conscious life for a while, but I always end up losing focus or distracting myself with work, kids, family. What can I do to avoid falling into distraction patterns to focus more?"
Do you want to answer it? Do you want me to answer it?
Go for it.
Well, I think again, it's really dedicating myself to spending some time in the silence. When I hear that question, I think about the cultural programming that we all have to be superstars now, right? Many people are balancing kids and soccer practice and keeping the home alive and working a job and being in partnership. And, when I even start thinking that, I think about the energy that can be really depleting, right? And so I think one common theme that I hear a lot of people saying in the 21st century is, I feel burnt out, I feel overwhelmed, I feel like there's never enough time. And there's this really interesting paradox. When I slow down and really listen deeply, I have more energy. But when I'm trying to put out fires all the time, it's depleting. I'm thinking of the old Zen proverb that says, you only need to meditate 20 minutes a day unless you're too busy, then you need 40.
Yes, I think that's great. I have a couple of things to say about this. I mean, one, there's the logistics of maybe, what would it be like to dedicate 20 minutes a day, if that? I mean, I know these super moms that, who are trying to do everything, who maybe wake up 30 minutes earlier before anyone else has woken up, to have that time for themselves, to be able to meditate, to do some journaling, to work on their project, whatever it is. So is there a way to logistically manage the schedule where maybe someone else has the kids and you're able, or maybe you go like away from the home and do this, find another space, go to the library, go to somewhere else where you can like have that time and space for yourself, but actually build it into your schedule and get support, like maybe your partner can, or, a relative, a friend can watch the kids for a while you're doing, your projects. That's a logistical thing. That's probably, there's a way to make that happen. But then there's also the core belief. Like if we go into the core false beliefs, I would wonder for this person, do you have a point of view that says, my needs don't matter, right? Or everybody else's needs, like I have to take care of everybody else before I can take care of myself, which is not what they tell you on the airplane. They tell you on the airplane to put the oxygen mask on you first and then on someone else.
Yeah, I love that. And we have some pretty strong gender programs in our culture, right? And I look at in my lifetime, which, is blink of an eye in some ways, I think about what women were taught, right? You have to be everything, and then women are in the workforce, and then now you have to be the perfect mom, and now you need to be super present for your children and look at their needs. And I think what you're saying is so important, Adriana, because I do think this idea of being superhuman is so prevalent in our culture. And when I slow down, see, here's the thing. Self-care, true self-care is not an external. Yes, a spa day is great. Getting our nails done is fun. All of that is great. A massage, but that's not really ultimate self-care. Ultimate self-care for me is which self am I focusing on? When I'm focusing on my deeper spiritual self and carving out some time for me in that, not only the spa day. I'm not trying to say let's not have spa days. I don't want those to be cut out. But there's something in addition to that. It's like spending dedicated time in the silence. And there's a place within each of us that has boundless energy, that's infinite. And the more I dedicate myself time to touching that and living from that, then I have more energy in the world. So I guess it's a paradox when I let go of the idea that I have to be superhuman and tap into my essential nature. In some ways, it seems like we can be superhumans.
Well, that's what I would call the infinite being, right? Like when we're plugged into that part of ourselves, or the universe, plugged into source is how some people might call it. There is an infinite amount of energy that we can bring in. And sometimes our bodies need rest, right? So it's like, how do we balance being spiritual beings in a physical body, right? And I think that does take maybe some visioning, and with a question. We both love the living in the question, like, how could I create more space for myself? Where might I find more time? How can I plug in to more energy? How can I plug into source? What does that even mean? These may be things to like journal about or meditate on, and really, because the question is going to empower and open up more possibilities.
Yeah. And two questions that I love. One of them, just to name it, if I notice myself feeling overwhelmed, I realize I'm not in the moment. I'm thinking about the 12 things I have to do today. And so the question, what am I doing, or where am I at right now? It's powerful. Where am I at in this moment? Oh, where I'm right here. I'm talking to Adriana right now. I'm not in my next interview, right? I'm right here. Right. And then the other one is a question that you often ask, Adriana, and that is, what would it be like? Right? What would it be like so what would it be like to slow down? What would it be like to take a day off? What would it feel like if I were to shift this? Right? And then these aren't questions that we're looking for an answer. These are questions to live in and notice the expansive nature of questioning.
Yes. And an awareness may come, but you're not seeking the answer. It's like ask and receive, right? That whole premise. You're asking a question of the universe, and then you kind of sit back and receive whatever comes your way. It might be an idea. It might be a piece of information. But the intention with the question is to like put it out there so that you can receive.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So that was the first question. Hang on. There were a couple more. I think I'm addicted to work, or being the computer, at least, or being maybe at the computer. It's like I have to be there all the time, almost like if I didn't, I would not be myself. If I'm doing something there, it's wrong. I'd like to stop this. How can I create a more conscious life from there?
Well, so here's the thing. It's really interesting. Thank you for the person who asked the question. I actually, in conscious creation, I choose two characters, and one of the characters, her name is Sasha. It's not really someone I know, but she's this high performing lawyer that's trying to get partner, right? And we follow her whole storyline. She grew up in a family of achievers, and she grew up thinking that she had the perfect life, right? Like, I didn't have an abusive past. I had these parents that gave me the best education. I learned how to speak multiple languages. But when we explore throughout the book, she comes to realize that the what we might call workaholism or high achieving, we start to explore what's the core false belief that's driving it, right? Because we talk about core false beliefs and then strategies. So if the core false belief, if the strategy is perfectionism or workaholism, we want to explore the possibility that the core false belief might be the opposite of it. In Sasha's case in the book, we discover that her core false belief was buried really deeply, and it's, I'm not worthy. And so she was trying to achieve so that she could prove she was worthy. And then as we dove into her past, she realized that her dad, very well-intentioned, gave her a lot of praise when she got the A's and was silent the one time she got a B, right? So that became, oh my gosh, I have to perform in order to be worthy.
Yeah, I'm ditto on that. I think what I might add here is maybe some questions around, what do you think it what does it bring you to always be working on the computer? What are you trying to prove? Which might get to where you're talking about. What are you trying to prove? What does it do for you? Like, what's the value of working in that kind of way? And what would happen if you didn't? I love that question. What would happen if you didn't? If you didn't live up to what other people expect of you? If you didn't live up to your own, perhaps unrealistic expectations, which this person might have, some perfectionist, maybe, some perfectionist, unrealistic expectations of themselves, what would happen? Well, then people would judge me. People might abandon me. I might be left all alone, something along those lines. And again, it might lead us back to a different core false belief of I'm unlovable. I need to please others in order to be okay. I have to prove that I'm capable of being a super worker, or some other kinds of, with addiction. I mean, they use the term addictive. Are you trying to avoid something? Like, are you staying addicted and on the computer because you don't really want to deal with like what's going on in your relationship or what's going on with your health or some other area of your life? Is it a distraction you're using? So, I think there's a lot of possibilities for questions that might bring more awareness about what's really driving this behavior. Because this person is like a good example of like not so conscious of what it is that's driving their addictive working.
Yeah, I love it. And I love what you said, because that question, whether we're looking, Adriana, you and I have worked with people that have food issues, have sex issues, have shopping issues, all the different things that we might call addiction. And your question of what shows up if you don't do it, right? So like someone who has an issue, for example, let's say I'm overeating at night, and every night at 2 a.m. before I wake up and I binge eat, right? What shows up if you don't do it, right? And then that's what we want to explore. Is it an emotion? Is it a thought? Is it all of the above? And then we eventually get down to the core of it, and the brilliant strategy. See, it's very easy to go into blame and shame about the behavior. All right, addiction bad, over shopping bad, workaholism bad, but that's not really going to help us shift it. When we say, oh, what's brilliant about this? What is great about this? What is it managing? And in what way is it helping me get my needs met? And then we start to look at the ways it's not. Then we're empowered to start making choice. Oh, this is a strategy to try to manage the core false belief. Is it really working? It's okay if it's not working. It's okay if it is working to an extent, because nothing could be truer or less useful than saying you shouldn't be doing that, right? Because we hear that all the time, right? You shouldn't be eating. You shouldn't be doing this. Shouldn't be your weight. You shouldn't, on and on and on. And instead of that, we offer what's brilliant about this. Where did this originate? From many of us. For example, I would find that if something was really emotional, I would shut down. And I judged that. And then I realized, wow, when I was a kid, things got intense and I'd go in my room and close the door and it felt safe. So I would cocoon myself from the frequency or the energy that was happening in my home. So that became an automatic response, and I wasn't aware of it until I was. Then I went into blame. Oh, I shouldn't be shutting down. I should be able to stay open. Once I started saying, oh no, this is a tool that I use that really helped me early in life, then I could start looking at, is it still effective? Not, is it bad and how do I get rid of it? But wow, look how brilliant my little 7-year-old was. You were a really brilliant little kid. Go lock that door, close it, go into fantasy, all the things that I did to survive.
Yeah, so that's moving out of the judgment, which only makes us feel worse about ourselves and keeps us stuck, right? Yeah. Okay. And then last question I have here. the more I step up in my reality, the more I choose, but I can't help feeling the feeling of loneliness, like I'm distancing myself from my loved ones. Is there a way to fix this?
So, okay. There's not a way to fix it because nothing's broken. Right. And I have so much compassion for you because I think I've been where what you're describing. As I started to evolve in my own path, some of the relationships I was in, the sacred contracts we had, gossiping is a great example, and I recently had an experience where I dipped into gossiping for a moment, and the universe gave me all these instant like repercussions, like results. Not that I was bad and I got punished. It wasn't karma, but it was like, oh, I had these friendships that were based only on talking about other people. And as I started to become more conscious, I started to realize that's not feeding my soul. That's coming from my woundology, as my friend Temple Hayes says. I felt wounded, and talking about people was a way to try to manage the wound. And as I healed that, I couldn't be in the presence of gossip because it was really hurting my soul. And so in some very practical ways, there were relationships that ended and I started feeling lonely. And so in a practical way, what I will say is conscious community. Conscious community has changed my life. I went to new thought communities. I found, like access consciousness for some people. There are a lot of different conscious communities that we can join and find our, not just like-minded people, but I don't know if this is gonna be a word, but like frequency people, right? Like, oh, I'm in the same vibration as you. And then I don't feel alone again. But it's interesting because feeling lonely is part of the spiritual path to me, because I wanted to connect with people so badly that I was getting fed from my relationships. And as I went more internal and started to evolve, it was almost like my ego was grieving. It was grieving the old way of being. It was grieving the old relationships. Even if the relationship stayed, the way I was relating to that person had to change.
Yeah. I have a slightly different take. I actually, when I hear the word lonely, I think of lonely versus alone. And lonely is a judgment, right? Lonely is taking this idea that I am alone, like I might be like physically alone in my home at the moment, right? And that's a neutral statement. It's a statement of fact. But what judgment am I imposing on it? Is it good? Like I definitely have days when I'm like, oh my God, thank God I'm in my house by myself and I'm away from everyone. That is a judgment. It's a positive judgment.
Right.
Or I might think to myself, oh, I'm all alone and nobody loves me. It must be because I'm such a terrible person. Either way, loneliness often derives from a judgment. So I would ask that person, is there a way in which you are judging that whatever you are creating is somehow bad, that having some space from your family is a bad thing? Do you have a belief, again, another core false belief, that you must be connected with your loved ones at all times or something like that? Or that if you're not, it means you're being abandoned, it means you've done something wrong. I would try to unpack more of those subconscious programs that person could have going on that create the judgment of I am lonely, rather than what is true. Like you said, I think on the spiritual path, sometimes we evolve in ways that others may not understand, right? You go through life with people, you might be on that same vibe, same frequency, and then you might grow apart, and then you might find some other people to walk on your path with. That is a known kind of thing, that people can kind of go in different directions as people move and evolve. But what if that wasn't bad? And what if it wasn't wrong?
Yeah, I love that. I love what you added there. It's really important to look at all the programs and the ideas. And as we've said, that judgment keeps us feeling stuck. Love it. This is why I love collaborating with you. It's fun.
I know. And I'm so excited that we actually are working on this workbook to really give people tangible, because the books are always so wonderful with presenting these different perspectives. And then the workbooks really become like getting in the nitty gritty, right? And like we give you questions and exercises to actually move you towards having more consciousness so that you can create something different for your life. So TJ, the book itself is out. How can people find it?
tjwoodward.com/buy book. And if you go there now, there's a free gift you're going to get. The ebook's only $5. So that's the best place to find it.
Excellent. And then we are working this weekend. In fact, we're going to be working more on the workbook. So that'll probably be out in the next couple months. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect intention.
Yes. Wonderful. And so if people want to find you, it sounds like tjwoodward.com is the place to go.
That's it.
He's all over social media as well, as am I, adrianapopescu.org. And we're so grateful that you guys joined us today. And TJ, of course, to you always, immense gratitude. I love our conversations. I love what we're creating in the world. I think for both of us, we're just so interested in empowering people. That's like right. Letting them know that there's a different choice. If your life is not working, there are tools and ways that you can uncover why something's not working and create something different. Yes.
So thank you. And I love collaborating with you.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time on Ask Dr. Adriana.